South Dakota, June 1823. On the vast expanse of the undulating prairie that extends to the horizon in every direction, a contingent of mules, horses, and men moves warily alongside a river, with pensive eyes switching from the water to the surrounding landscape, searching for signs of danger. They are hundreds of miles from anything resembling a city, in territory that does not belong to them. They are a mix of men from a plethora of backgrounds and ethnicities, dressed in a menagerie of wool shirts, buckskin leggings, boots, moccasins, serapes, raccoon skin caps, and belts. Their common goal, put simply, is money, made by way of accumulating and selling beaver pelts, the coveted material that makes the popular top hats of the day worn throughout New York, Paris, and London. Their methods are simple. Set traps for the beavers, after which the animals will become ensnared in the traps and drown. Then, the trappers will return to collect the beaver pelts and repeat this process until the beaver population has been exhausted, before finally moving on. But, in this case, simple does not equal easy. Opposing them are the elements, from blazing heat to icy cold, from snow to dust storms, from droughts to flash flooding. Animal attacks, from the numerous grizzly bears which prowl the continent, to rattlesnakes, to buffalo stampedes, pose an ever-present threat. Hostile native tribes like the Blackfoot, Arikara, and Comanche have, already, in these early years of the fur trade, killed many trappers in gruesome ways for violating their tribal territorial bounds. Among this party of men are some who will go on to become legends in the annals of mountain man history. They are commanded by William H. Ashley and Major Andrew Henry, and among their ranks are Hugh Glass and Jedediah Smith, all men whose future exploits will become the stuff of mountain man legend. Smith is an anomaly amongst this already anomalous lot, as he is a devout Methodist, reads the Bible daily, and refrains from coarse language, as well as dalliances with unknown women and strong drink. On this day, he is approached by Major Henry and directed to ride south to Ashley's fort, aptly known as Fort Ashley. He is to inform Ashley that the company is in need of more horses and that the Arikara tribe will likely be the closest people with which to trade in horseflesh. Jedediah Smith is still a relative neophyte to the world of trapping, but he is a man on the rise within the ranks of his company, as his reputation as a stalwart and trustworthy companion grows by the day. And so, Smith sets out to the south, and is fortuitously met by Ashley on the trail. The pair then proceed to the Arikara village, where they seek to buy more horses. The Arikara, a northern plains semi-agricultural tribe known both for their prowess in trade and warfare, whose ire had been stirred by some recent bad dealings with other white traders, are in a less than cordial mood. However, Ashley and his men have guns and ammunition that the Arikara know they can acquire through few, if any, other sources. Thus, there is a terse and tense peace, as often happens in these instances on the frontier. In the wilds of North America, native tribes and fur trappers are not necessarily antagonistic. In fact, sometimes the case can be quite the opposite. For centuries in colonial America and Canada, native tribes had been employed by large fur company magnates to supply them with the highly profitable furs of the deer, mink, otter, and beaver that had profligated their homeland. However, as game populations began to dwindle, the fur companies eventually brought their search for pelts to the expanses of the North American prairies and Rocky Mountains. The tribes who inhabited these lands oftentimes expressed little to no interest in working for fiat currency or goods when their lifestyles and economies were focused on hunting the immense herds of American bison that populated the plains. Thus, in the spirit of their predecessors in men like Daniel Boone and Simon Kenton, who were known as long hunters, the fur companies have scoured the outlying cities of the frontier, offering gainful employment to any man with the gumption and skills to venture onto the inhospitable frontier to procure the valuable fur of the innumerable beaver that inhabited the rivers and streams that crisscrossed the continent. Still, fur companies routinely employ native persons as translators, trackers, and trappers. Many of the early mountain men owe their skills to lessons learned from their native guides. Even in the 19th century, in the middle of the plains, no culture existed entirely in a vacuum. This could be seen not only in the dress of both native trappers and tribes, who often traded in various garb such as jewelry made from beads from China, hats made in factories on the eastern seaboard, and buffalo robes harvested and carefully prepared in centuries-old fashion by native tribeswomen. While tools such as firearms indeed proved invaluable to the native tribes, so too did steel tools and implements such as axes, knives, and cooking utensils. Thus, a robust trade between the fur-trapping companies and the inhabiting tribes of the northern plains has been a mainstay for years, even in the 1820s. At the Arikara village, initial dealings are made between Smith, Ashley, and the Arikara. As the sun begins to set, it is mutually agreed that trading will continue the following day. Ashley splits his forces into two, leaving one on land to guard the supplies they had brought out from the boats, and the other to man the two boats which were anchored about 30 yards from the banks of the river. It is decided that Ashley will be in direct command of the boats, and Smith will be in charge of the force guarding the supplies. Now, nearly all of the mountain men present go about their nightly duty of making dinner, cleaning their weapons, checking their supplies, and preparing for the next day's travel and trading. But when all have finally bedded down for the night, two men from the mountain man's party sneak into the Arikara camp with whiskey and trinkets that they hope to trade for illicit relations with the Arikara women. This proves to be a fatal mistake. Just after midnight, Colonel Ashley is awakened by 3 Arikara warriors who have snuck onto the boat and are attempting to loot its cargo. He brandishes his pistol and chases them off the boat. But just as the Arikara make it to the shore, and the sound of sloshing water from their swim strokes goes quiet, it is suddenly replaced by the frantic screams of one of the 2 mountain men who have snuck into the Arikara camp. He and his companion had indeed found the Arikara women they were hoping to, but they had also found the Arikara men, who were not happy with the presence of intruders attempting to defile their wives, daughters, and sisters. His companion has been cut down where he was found. The surviving trapper, a man named Edward Rose, has escaped and now appears on the banks of the river, making his way, as fast as he can, for the trapper's camp on shore. As he runs, he screams that his partner in mischief, a man named Aaron Stevens, is dead, and the Arikara are now in a collectively angry mood. Still cloaked in pre-dawn darkness and alerted to both the attempted robbery of Ashley's boat and the killing of their comrade in the camp by the now enraged Arikara, the mountain men begin to hurriedly and vociferously debate their options. Some argue for immediately moving the horses they have, a sizable herd by this point, to the opposite shore before daybreak, so that they might be in a better position to flee when the sun does come up, with at least the river between them and the expected Arikara attack. Others argue for the retrieval of Stephen's body. As these debates carry on, a lone Arikara suddenly appears on the horizon above the riverbanks. Still in the dark, he calls out that he will try to broker a deal for the return of their comrade's body, for the price of one of their best horses. The mountain men agree to this, but a short time later, the enterprising Arikara returns to inform them that unfortunately he will not be able to uphold his end of the deal. Stevens's body has in fact been so badly mutilated that there is nothing left to return to them. This, understandably, sends a cold chill through the ranks of the shore party. It is decided that they will now have to move the horses as quickly as possible as the sunrise nears with every passing minute. Remaining calm and cool by all accounts, Jed Smith embraces his first real opportunity at leadership and calmly directs the movement of the horses across the river. However, as the sun begins to rise and a large number of horses and men are still mid-river or on the near bank waiting their turn, the mountain men are greeted with a horrifying sight. Silhouetted in the new morning sunlight are hundreds of Arikara warriors, tamping shot down into their muskets, knocking their arrows, and taking up offensive positions. The full gravity of the situation is now painfully apparent to everyone present. They are stuck, with the enemy having the high ground and no cover to be found. Within moments, musket balls, spears, and arrows begin to rain down on them from above. Dozens of horses and a number of trappers fall dead in the initial volley, with many others bravely wounded. The screams of the injured and dying men and horses fills the air, as Ashley and the men on the boats attempt to meet them on the other shore and make their getaway. The men on the boats provide what covering fire they can, and the men on shore take cover behind the bodies of the dead horses. From here, as chaos reigns all around, Jed Smith coolly and calmly doles out directions to those in his charge. As he and his men fire and reload, they simultaneously make strategic retreats, moving by leapfrogging from one defensive position to the next until reaching the comparative safety of the boats. Amidst all of this, Ashley's boat has run aground momentarily on a sandbar. The other boat, at around this same time, cuts ties to their anchor and begins moving downstream in an attempt to at least save themselves from this seemingly hopeless situation. Ashley's boat is quickly freed and makes its way as close to the shore as possible. Smith and his men finally reach the banks of the river, dive in, and begin to frantically swim. Some are hit by arrows and musket balls and sink under the surface, never to be seen again. Some are swept downriver beyond the extended oars and hands of their comrades, also never to be seen again. The lucky few who managed to make it onto the boats, including Jed Smith and Hugh Glass, now hunker down and return fire as the boats make their way as quickly as possible down the Missouri River and out of range of Arikara musket and arrow fire. For some of these men, this will be the end of their mountain man adventures. Those who decide they have had enough of this wild and dangerous life are put on boats back to St. Louis, along with their injured and recovering comrades. No one blames them for preferring the comforts of home to this lonely land where life is all too often short and seemingly cheap. But the careers of William Ashley, Hugh Glass, and Jedediah Smith are far from over. One incident immediately following the battle speaks to the human cost of this attack that will be felt by families scattered all over the American states back east. Hugh Glass himself will go on to pen a heart-wrenching letter to the family of John Gardner, a mountain man who had been killed in the Arikara fight. The letter reads, "Dear Sir, my painful duty is to tell you of the death of your son, who befell at the hands of the Indians 2nd June in the early morning. He lived little while after he was shot and asked me to inform you of his sad fate. We brought him to the ship, where he soon died. Mr. Jedediah Smith, young man of our company, made a powerful prayer which moved all of us greatly, and I am persuaded that John died in peace. His body we buried with others near this camp and marked the graves with a log. His things we send to you. The savages are greatly treacherous. We traded with them as friends, but after great storm of rain and thunder, they came at us before light, and many were hurt. I myself was shot in the leg. Master Ashley is bound to stay in these parts till the traitors are rightly punished. Your obedient servant, Hugh Glass." This letter denotes not only Glass's deep sense of humanity, as well as his anger towards the Arikara, but it is the first mention of the piety and character of Jedediah Smith. Smith would mount an expedition along with an unnamed French-Canadian trader to a nearby fort in the hopes of mounting an even larger retributive force to supplement those that Ashley had already mustered. After this, he would carry on to travel perhaps more country than any other mountain man in history. But the many stories of the legendary exploits of Hugh Glass, William Ashley, and Jedediah Smith are, for tonight, other stories for other times. Thank you for joining us. If you liked this story, click on one of the videos on your screen now to hear more. Also, If you'd like to learn more about Old West history, be sure to sign up for the HOKC newsletter. Link in the description. Thank you again for watching, and we'll see you next time on History at the OK Corral, home of history's greatest shootouts and showdowns.